All right, guys, this is Rob of the Steel Twins coming at you for another week of NFL predictions. Week 2 is in the books, and we are on to week 3 of NFL football. And today I have a special guest with me today, an OG member of the Discord chat, PaperPortal. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. It's crazy how we've already almost done with 2 weeks of the season. It's flown by so far.
Yeah, like when you're having fun, time flies by, especially when you're watching football. We're already at week 3. Huge shout out to the sponsor of this video. I want to give a thanks to ProfitX for sponsoring with us for the entirety of the NFL season. ProfitX is America's #1 sports prediction market where you can win real money predicting sports in 40 or more states. The best part about ProfitX is other sports books will be against the house and they'll take a certain commission from you. ProfitX is a peer-to-peer sports prediction exchange where users play against other players, other people, instead of playing against the house. And this allows you guys to select your own odds and request your own plays for the entire NFL season or for any sports you guys want with ProfitX. Users can accept existing odds posted by the house or other players if they want. But of course, if you don't like the odds, the best part is you can request your own. That way you get better value, real competition, and you can win on your own terms. So that's the best part about ProfitX, guys. If you guys are interested in using ProfitX for the NFL season, check them out. Sign up now at ProfitX.co. Use the promo code SteelTwins, and you'll get up to $200 when you use the site just for signing up. So sign up now, begin winning real money predicting sports. Terms and conditions apply. Huge shout out to ProfitX for sponsoring with us on this video. And to start things off, it's Thursday Night Football with, I'm anticipating a blowout here just based off the Dolphins here. We got the Dolphins at the Bills. What's your prediction?
Yeah, this one's going to be bad. The Dolphins, their defense is one of the worst in the league. It's very interesting that they let Javon Holland go on and traded Jalen Ramsey, and they look really bad. They got blown out week 1. Their offense looked a little better week 2, but I don't think they have a chance against the Bills. Josh Allen's been on a roll. This is going to be a blowout. This is an easy win for the Bills.
Yeah, considering Buffalo rebounded big time, especially that defense against the Jets, to which they limited the Jets, and we know what the Jets did with the Steelers on week 1. The Bills got a lot of momentum with that come from behind victory versus the Ravens on Sunday night, and of course the win versus the Jets. The Dolphins, I just don't know anymore. Like, they got a lot to fix, a lot to figure out. The offense is not really gelling, and Tyreek Hill's having some issues with the team, and plus other stuff off the field. But the defense is just not holding their end of the bargain. I can't see Miami winning this game or even keeping it close at that. So I got the Bills winning here for sure. Sunday games, we start off with the Green Bay Packers going to Cleveland to face the Browns. What is your prediction?
This is another massive mismatch. I mean, the Packers have one of the best defenses in the league right now. They look like a team that's going to go far in the playoffs. And then the Browns, they just look bad. They got blown out by the Ravens. I think it's only a matter of time before we see Joe Flacco get benched and Dylan Gabriel getting a chance. I don't think the Browns have much of a chance against the Packers defense. I think the Packers are going to win this one pretty easily.
Yeah, I have to agree right there. Obviously with the Micah Parsons trade and how he's performing so far in his first 2 weeks as a Packer, the Packers got a lot of momentum, probably the most amount of momentum throughout any NFL team currently throughout the league, and it's probably going to carry on throughout the whole season, if I had to be honest with you. The Browns, I mean, we saw what happened versus the Ravens, and it's what we all anticipated because it's Cleveland at the end of the day with Joe Flacco at quarterback. There's only so much that he could do, and the Cleveland offense going up against the Green Bay defense. I mean, their tackles, they're gonna have a challenge for sure going up against Micah and that pass rush. And the Green Bay offense, they're starting to click. The offense, it's very young, but it's growing, year by year, week by week, really. They got a great running game with Josh Jacobs, of course. Just Green Bay's just looking really good right now. I don't see Green Bay losing this game one bit, so Green Bay for sure. Next game, we got the surprisingly so far 2-0 Indianapolis Colts going on the road to face the Tennessee Titans. What's your prediction?
Yeah, I mean, the Colts, I think coming into the season, they had a really good roster. They've got, a ton of really good players. Their concern was the quarterback position. And when they went with Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson, I was surprised. I didn't agree with it, but it seemed to pay off so far. Daniel Jones looks really good. He looks really comfortable in that offense. And then obviously Jonathan Taylor, he's what we think of in Jonathan Taylor. Tyler Warren looks great. The defense looks great. I think right now they're the favorites to win the AFC South. And unfortunately for Cam Ward, the Titans, there's just no help for him. There's not much he can do. His receivers aren't playing well. The defense isn't playing well. So it's kind of just an unfortunate season for him. Hopefully they can get him some help in the offseason next year so he can actually, play well. But I think that the Colts are going to come in, and I think they're going to continue their winning streak, and I think they're going to beat the Titans.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Tennessee, it's going to be a patient thing when it comes to Cam Ward, being the ideal franchise, the future at quarterback. He's going to need a lot of help with his surroundings, especially with the offensive line. I feel bad that Dan Moore is his left tackle. God bless Cam Ward. Their targets, they got to be a bit more consistent. Their running game, Tony Pollard's a good back. I would say he's probably their best offensive player, but there's only so much he can do. That defense, there's not really a whole lot they're doing at the moment. And, they had a rough game against the Rams. The Colts, Daniel Jones, 2 weeks. It's only 2 weeks, but so far he's playing good football. He's slinging the ball. He's connecting with his targets well with Tyler Warren. Jonathan Taylor's a great back. Their defense is stepping up big time. Their new safety, I think, Cameron Bynum, he's looking really good, making some plays week by week. Like, that Colts team is so far so good for the start of the season. And I think the Colts get the win here on the road. Next game, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, who will be without Joe Burrow for at least 3 months as he's going to get surgery on a turf toe injury. They will go on the road versus the Minnesota Vikings, who suffered a tough loss against the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. What's your prediction?
Yeah, I feel like Joe Burrow at this point has gotten injured in almost every ligament, and you do wonder, there's shades of Andrew Luck in his situation. So we'll see what happens with him long term. But they were able to beat the Jaguars last week. Jake Browning, he looks okay, but I do wonder if they would potentially make a call for a Jameis Winston, who's the Giants' third-string quarterback. I think that he would be a pretty good fit for the team because they can't rely on a game manager type of quarterback. They're going to just have to sling it and have to score a lot of points to win. But then the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy looked really good in the second half of the Bears game. Last week, not so much. So this is a game that I think, can the Vikings offense look better, and can J.J. McCarthy look better against the Bengals defense? And I'm going to take the Vikings at home. I think that, with no Joe Burrow, I think that they're going to be able to win, and they're going to get a lot of pressure on Jake Browning. He's going to make some mistakes.
Yeah, because the Bengals quarterback situation for pretty much the rest of the season, let's be real here, it's only just Jake Browning, since Burrow's going to be out for 3 months. I read this morning that the Bengals are making calls to free agents or even to certain teams about acquiring another quarterback. Who that is yet to be determined. That could be Jameis Winston, like you threw out there. I could see a Kirk Cousins, though I don't know if they really want to deal with that contract. So that's probably not a scenario there. But, you never know when it comes to the Bengals that they're really vying for something this season. Considering they are 2-0, they have a solid start, but
yeah.
Losing Burrow is a tough pill to swallow. The Vikings, McCarthy had a rough game. First the Falcons, he was responsible for 3 turnovers, two of them being interceptions. But the Vikings defense, they could only do so much. They tried to keep him within the game. Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator, they only allowed 1 touchdown. The Falcons, they did have Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier have a good game rushing wise. That was the majority of their yardage on primetime. But the Vikings defense, it's still reliable. They can still keep the Vikings within the games and give them a chance to win. It's just the offense has got to click. J.J. McCarthy's really got to work on the mechanics and just work on being more consistent and just building that chemistry with his targets, especially Justin Jefferson. It was only a second game. It might take a little bit of time for McCarthy. It's just one of those things. But for this game, considering the situation, especially with the Bengals, in their quarterback situation, because Browning, he had a solid performance, but he did, he was responsible for a couple turnovers. Going up against the Vikings defense, the Vikings are going to be looking to create turnovers and looking their chops at that for that possibility. If that happens, Minnesota, all they got to do against a poor Bengals defense, at least in my opinion still, all they got to do is take advantage. So considering it's at home and Minnesota's looking to bounce back, I think Minnesota gets this victory at home. Next game, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers going on the road to face a familiar foe in the New England Patriots. After what happened last week between Seattle, how are you feeling about the Steelers for week 3, man? What's your prediction?
Yeah, this is a defining point of the Steelers season because the amount of money that they have invested into this defense, if they come out and they look as bad as they have the past 2 weeks, I would be really concerned. I mean, the run defense has been awful. I would love for them to get Keanu Benton out of the nose. He's not good there. They need to get him in as a pass rusher and not, taking on double teams consistently. That would help the run defense. I don't know what Harmon, how long Harmon's going to be out, because that's definitely something that would help the run defense. But I mean, they just got to play better. Luckily, I do think that Trayvon Henderson, he hasn't played a ton. I mean, he's somebody who I would definitely be concerned about with his explosiveness, but it seems like he's not great as a pass blocker right now. So it looks like it's going to be Stevenson and Gibson, which is at least more manageable than a Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall. But the run defense has to step up. It has to be better. The defense has to be better, because you can't be getting allowing as many points as they have in the first 2 weeks. Normally this is a game that I would probably have the Steelers losing, because it is against the Patriots away, and they don't normally do super well against the Patriots. But this is also a game coming off of a bad loss that the Steelers consistently do rebound from under Mike Tomlin. So I am going to pick the Steelers, but I can see this game going either way. Yeah,
that's a great point you make. Like when the Steelers have a very bad performance, they do tend to bounce back and perform better, even if the next game is a close game, a nail biter, or even a bit of a sloppy performance, they could rebound with a win. That's going to be their mission going on the road. I believe the last time the Steelers have beaten New England in Foxborough was back in 2008, when Brady was out all season with an injury and Matt Castle was the quarterback. So it's been quite a bit. The Patriots, they had a very good performance versus the Dolphins, putting up 33 points. Drake May, I think he had 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing. Drake May's looking very solid. I like what Drake May brings to the table as a quarterback, as a player. I think what he can do, building that chemistry and just growing as a player with Mike Vrabel as the head coach for the Patriots. They have a very solid roster. The running game consists of Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, who are very good running backs at that. They know how to run the football, but they also know how to catch out the backfield. So that's something that the Steelers are going to have to try to limit. But considering what has been the case for the Steelers' rush defense the past 2 weeks, I'm not going to underestimate these two backs one bit. Their defense, on the other hand, the O-line is going to have to play better, because their front seven does consist of some credible players right there. The Patriots, they signed Milton Williams, they signed Harold Landry there, Christian Barmore they have, so Robert Spillane, former Steeler. They got quality players up on that front seven, and when it comes to the offensive lines, especially on the left side with mainly Broderick and Isaac Sayamalu, if they can't hold their end of the bargain, if they can't stand their ground, they're going to bring the pressure over there. And when it comes to A-Rod, he's scrambling a lot more than I'm sure he envisioned to. And if the O-line doesn't fix up their problems, it might be a long day for the Steelers offense. But this team in general, they got to work on everything, and they've acknowledged that. They've said that. I don't know how many times we have to hear the players and the coaches say, we got to get better, we got to grow from this and whatnot, only for the same stuff to happen. But bottom line is, you got to grow, you got to get better, and you got to perform, and you got to get the win. For this one, I don't know. I went back and forth with this game in regards to predicting who's going to win here. Maybe it's the lingering effects of what happened with the Seahawks, but as of now, I have New England getting this win at home. They got some momentum right now, especially after the performance they had versus a division rival. And, the Patriots, with their talent, you never want to underestimate them, especially with Mike Vrabel as head coach. Yeah. So as of now, I have the Patriots getting the win here. But of course, as a Steelers fan, I hope I am wrong. Next game, we have a very good NFC battle here. We got the Los Angeles Rams at the Philadelphia Eagles. What is your prediction?
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. It's criminal that this is a 1 p.m. game. This should have been later in the slate. But this is a rematch of the divisional game last year. The Rams were the only team in the playoffs that didn't, lose by multiple scores to the Eagles, and they look good. They look good so far. Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, that's a really good duo. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts only has, I believe, around 250 passing yards. He's been a very clear game manager. He's just taken, short passes, and they've ran the ball. They've ran the push a ton. They look good just coming off of last season. This is going to be a really good game, but I'm actually going to pick the upset here. I think the Rams are going to come into Philadelphia fueled off of the NFC divisional round loss this year. I think they're going to upset the Eagles.
It's quite the prediction you got there. And you know what? It's one that, I can see happening for sure, because the Rams, they got, a lot of great talent, and Sean McVay leading the charge. As long as he's head coach, you can always count on the Rams being a very credible and fighting football team. Stafford's still playing some good football. Kyron Williams is a great back. The addition of Devontae Williams is definitely paying off already within the first 2 weeks. We know what Puka can do. That defense is young. It's got a lot of young players, but they're only going to grow, and they're looking very, very good. They did last week versus Cam Ward and the Titans. But they will have a huge test here against Philly with, of course, Saquon Barkley run the ball and Jalen Hurts. Like I said, being that game manager, he's not really lighting the league right now as far as throwing the ball or having like 4 or 5 passing touchdown performances. And he's a guy that doesn't exactly need to, just because of how Philly controls the game and clock management and how just protective they are of the football. As long as you have Barkley to hand the ball off behind that offensive line, I mean, like, Philly's always going to be favorited for their matchups. And that defense, you know, they came up big versus Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs, got an interception off of him. You know, they can get constant pressure and whatnot. Philly's obviously still a good football team, but so is the Rams. This game, honestly, it's a future playoff game, in my honest opinion. It was last year in the divisional matchup. So it's a rematch of that game for this. But game could go either way. But I think I'm going to go with the home team here with Philly. I think they get the victory here this week. But I would not be surprised or shocked if the Rams were to pull off the upset, quote unquote. But it should be a very fun matchup here. Next one, we have the New York Jets at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Justin Fields is in concussion protocol, so his availability is to be determined at this point. But what is your prediction for the Jets and the Bucs?
Yeah, well, I mean, after last week, I don't know if having Fields or not having Fields makes much of a difference. I mean, they looked really good in week 1. That looks less impressive now that we've seen what the Steelers defense looks like. But this last week, they just got blown out by the Bills. No sort of passing game. They were awful. And the Buccaneers have looked pretty good. You know, they don't even have Chris Godwin back yet, so they're not even at full strength. But Emeka Egbuka, he's been one of the best rookies so far. He looked really good in week 1. You know, the Jets. I feel like every season the Jets are, you know, propped up as this team that's going to look pretty good, and then they always look like the Jets. So yeah, I'm going to take the Bucs in this one. I think they're going to win.
Yeah, like 154 total yards on offense by the Jets. You know, Fields was non-existent. Breece Hall was non-existent, absolutely, versus the Bills. They're obviously going to look to rebound on the road here. I think this is their first road game of the season, if I'm not mistaken, versus the Bucs. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. But yeah, like the Jets, I mean, every year they're hyped up of like, oh, they got all this young talent, a new head coach, new regime. You know, the Jets could finally be turned the tide. At the end of the day, the Jets are the Jets. Like, let's be real here. You know, you can never count on the Jets. The Bucs, however, you know, they're a stud football team with stud talent, great front office. They just know how to collect talent, scout talent, and just add talent and develop talent at that. Just a resurgence of Baker Mayfield is, you know, very evident of what he's done since being a Buccaneer, being that franchise guy now. The running game is good. You know, the receivers, you mentioned they don't have Godwin, but Emeka Egbuka is just a stud. We knew he would be coming out of the Ohio State, and he's just been very, very solid, very good. And that defense can hold their own end of the bargain as well. Tampa Bay, I mean, they're obviously the big favorite to win their division this year, just looking at the teams that is in that division. If it's not Tampa Bay, it could be Atlanta, but Atlanta's still got some things. They're still a bit of an uncertain group right there. But I think you can count on Tampa Bay to get the win here because the Jets, at the end of the day, despite the talent they possess, they are the Jets, but we'll see. But I got Tampa winning. Next game, we have the Las Vegas Raiders at the Washington Commanders. What is your prediction?
I think this is going to be a little bit of an underrated good game because I think the Raiders are a really solid team. Geno Smith, he's a really good quarterback. He's really underrated. Doesn't really get the credit he deserves. But the Commanders, they looked bad last week against the Packers, but it's also the Packers. So I'm not going to put too much into that. Jurgen Daniels is obviously a great quarterback. And then Austin Eckler is now not going to be playing this game. So we're going to get to see a lot more of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I think he's a really good running back. And he's actually looked like he may be the best rookie running back right now with the struggles that other rookie running backs have had. And then, you know, the Raiders obviously have a ton of weapons, you know, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers. But I think the Commanders are going to rebound from their loss, and I think they're going to win this one.
Yeah, you know, like Commanders, they had a bit of a rough game versus the Packers and Lambeau just last Thursday. But the Commanders, you know, despite that, they're still a good football team. Jaden Daniels, I find to be a very stud quarterback. You mentioned their running game with their running back. You know, they did lose Eckler, which is a blow, despite Eckler not being the superstar player he once was as a Charger, but Krosky Merritt, he's been filling in. He's really made the most of his opportunities, and he's obviously going to be the starter moving forward. So this is a huge opportunity for him to really take that ball and run with it, no pun intended. But Washington, they still got good targets. Deebo Samuel's really looked good, very solid within the first 2 weeks of being a Commander. Terry McLaurin, we know what he can do. Zach Ertz is the ageless wonder at tight end. Their line can hold up. Their defense, they still got some stars, some playmakers, and some young guys, especially in the secondary, that are only going to grow and get better. And Dan Quinn leading the charge. Washington's still a good football team. The Raiders, it's a new everything over there with Pete Carroll, Geno Smith and whatnot, Ashton Genty at running back, Brock Bowers, of course, new wide receivers, 2 rookie wide receivers at that. But the Vegas Raiders, they paper-wise, they have a good football team. And even on that defensive side of the ball, they got a good football team. It might just be a bit of a patient factor when it comes to what Pete Carroll is trying to mold over in Vegas for the Raiders and whatnot. Going up against in my opinion, still an NFC contender as the Commanders. It's definitely going to be a tough battle, but should be a fun game regardless. But I got the Commanders getting the victory at home. Next game, we got the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. What is your prediction?
Yeah, the Panthers, Bryce Young, I think he looked a lot better this past week than week one. He was really bad week one, but the Panthers were getting blown out early in the game, and then they kind of had a fourth quarter resurgence. Bryce Young, he had to throw the ball 55 times, which isn't really ideal. But then the Falcons kind of just found their offense, and their offense is just Bijan Robinson. Get him the ball, let him do his thing, and he's obviously one of the best running backs in the league. These games are usually pretty good between the Panthers and the Falcons, but I think the Falcons are going to win this one. I don't know how the Panthers are going to stop Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, an NFC South division rivalry here. These games honestly could go either way, especially with that division. But the Falcons, their rushing offense is very reliable. Like I said, Robinson and Algier, they had a very good performance versus the Minnesota Vikings. Carolina, I feel like they got a lot of young talent, which they're going to have to mold and grow with I think a second-year head coach, if I'm not mistaken, especially even on that defensive side of the football. Carolina, it's going to take a bit for them, but they do have some football players that can go out there and perform and definitely put up a challenge for sure for any football team, at least in my honest opinion. But Atlanta, Penix is looking pretty decent. He's looking solid so far. The offense is looking good with their targets. The defense is doing pretty good so far. Again, when it comes to NFC South, it could honestly go either way, but I think I'm going to go with Atlanta here to get the victory, considering they are coming off a nice victory after Sunday night versus the Vikings. I think they get the victory here, keep the momentum going. Next game, we got the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. What's your prediction?
Yeah, these are two teams that I think coming into the season had a lot of expectations and haven't really performed where they probably want. The Texans, the Laremy Tunsil trade, I think, was a really odd trade to do, giving away him a great tackle for a bunch of seconds. C.J. Stroud, they're not protecting him. I don't think he's been terrible. I think that he just really hasn't had a great offensive line up front. And then the Jaguars kind of, I think prematurely paid Trevor Lawrence. They gave him that massive contract, and he's just been super inconsistent. I looked at this, and their top 3 leading receivers right now are Diami Brown, Brenton Strange, and Parker Washington, which I don't think anybody would have guessed coming into the season. Brian Thomas has only caught 5 catches out of 19 targets. He's just really been nowhere to be seen. And they lost to the Bengals, who lost Joe Burrow. That's a game that they probably should have won. So this game could really go either way. I don't, both of these teams are struggling, but I do think the Texans will rebound, and I think C.J. Stroud's going to look better. And I'm going to take the Texans here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go Houston here. I still like Stroud as a quarterback. I think he's still got all the potential in the world. It's just whatever's going on with him or just the offense in general, they still got to go through some growing pains and figure some stuff out, because I still believe that Houston is a very good football team and an AFC playoff team for sure, especially being led by DeMeco Ryans, who's, in my opinion, still a very good head coach. They just got to work some things out, especially in the early portion of the season. The Jags, I never believed in the Jags. I never believed in Trevor Lawrence. He got overpaid for sure. Travis Hunter, he's not really doing much early on. He's not really being impactful on offense or defense at that. The Jags, I mean, the best player I would say so far for them has been Travis Etienne. He's having a very solid start on the season, but there's only so much that he could do in that defense. I mean, like, you can't really rely on the Jaguars defense. Like, this ain't the Jaguars defense of old. Not anymore. And I know they have Liam Cohen as a head coach. It's his first year. Like I mentioned with previous teams, it's one of those years that could be growing pains, could be a patient factor with them. It's just, I never believed in Jacksonville at all. I'm going to go with Houston to get this victory. I just don't believe in Jacksonville. I don't. Next game, we have the Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers. This should be a fun game. What's your prediction?
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. The Broncos, week one, Bo Nix didn't play super well, and they probably shouldn't have won the game, but they got lucky because they were playing the Titans. And this past week, they probably should have beaten the Colts, but unfortunately, they committed a penalty on the field goal at the end of the game, and so the Colts got to re-kick. But Bo Nix, he looked a lot better. The offense looked a lot better. Troy Franklin has been pretty good. And then the Chargers, their running game, it didn't look great against the Chiefs. Marion Hampton, he struggled a little bit. I think they're going to involve Najee Harris a little more, and I think they should. He's not the most exciting running back, but he's consistent. This is going to be a good one. This could go either way, but I think the Broncos are gonna win this one.
Yeah, this game could go either way. Two challenging football teams led by recognized head coaches with two young quarterbacks at that. Should be an exciting football game here. Denver, Bo Nix, he's looking decent to start his second year. I think he threw 3 touchdowns versus the Colts, even in a loss. Nix is still looking pretty decent. J.K. Dobbins run the ball. He's looking good to start off his Bronco career. Behind him is R.J. Harvey, the rookie. He's looking solid as well. The receivers, Cortland Sutton, Bo Nix is connecting with him. Troy Franklin, his teammate, pretty much back from Oregon. He's looking good in his second year. The defense, that Broncos defense is really strong. They got some players. They got some guys like Pat Surtain II and Zach Allen and Haloti. What's their safety's name? The former 49er. What's his name? Hufanga. Like, they got some guys that can ball, that can make some plays there, going up against the Chargers offense. Herbert's having a very strong start so far. Omarion Hampton, Najee Harris, those are the backs. I do agree. I think that they could involve Harris a little bit more often. The ideal, thought and mission and future at back is, of course, Hampton. They select him in the first round. But Harris, he's not the fastest. He's not the most exciting, but he's a guy that, like you said, is consistent. He can get the job done, and, he's protective of the ball at the same time. If they involve Harris more, it could be some change on that offense and a bit more unpredictability at run the ball, maybe if they were to use Najee in certain situations. But the receivers are great as well. The defense is holding up well. Could go either way. Could really come down to whoever turns the ball over the most, really, or turns the ball over first. Let's be real here. But considering that the Chargers are at home, I think I'm gonna go with the team at home, the home field advantage. I'm gonna go with the Chargers here. But I would not be surprised if Denver were to pull off the win here and get the win on the road. But I'm gonna go with the Chargers for now. Next game, we have the New Orleans Saints at the Seattle Seahawks. What is your prediction?
Yeah, it's a really weird game to put at 4:00 with the Saints. He's been decent. Rattler has been decent, but you do wonder why they didn't start Shower. At what point when Shaw will be put in? He's older than Rattler, but they took him in the second round. Maybe you'd want to see what he has. And then the Seahawks look like they have one of the best defenses in the league. They've been really good. They almost won that 49ers game if it weren't for the Jake Tongas touchdown. Darnold has been pretty good. He struggled a little bit early in the Steelers game, but then he really got a roll on it. And then Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet have kind of traded, having good and bad games. In week one, Charbonnet was a lot better, but against the Steelers, Kenneth Walker was a lot better. But that RB duo is one of the best in the league. They're both really good running backs. And then JSN and Cooper Kupp are just super consistent receivers, really good players to have on the team. And then I think they may get Witherspoon back this week. But I don't think they're going to have too much trouble with or without him. It's the Saints. I think the Seahawks are going to win this one pretty easily at home.
Yeah, like this, Rattler played good against the 49ers. He threw 3 touchdowns. He threw a nice bomb to one of his targets. I can't remember who caught the long pass, but Rattler looked pretty decent against the 49ers. I don't know how consistent he's going to be, though, because, Spencer Rattler, there's only so much, you can expect from the guy, considering, Tyler Shook is the ideal guy. How far that goes, that's yet to be determined for the Saints. The Saints, they got some talent, they got some guys, but the Saints are the Saints. I mean, like, you can't take them seriously. They're really not all that credible. And Kellen Moore in his first year, I mean, he's got a lot of work to do. Against Seattle, Sam Darnold, like I said, he looked better in the second half versus the Steelers. You know, he connected well with Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp, connected in the middle of the field constantly. Running game is very reliable. Their defense, you know, they got a lot of names. That front seven is no joke. Seattle, they're looking good, and considering that this is in Seattle at Lumen Field, you got to go with Seattle. I mean, like, when Seattle's at home, I mean, to me they're a different breed. You know, despite, you know, the team that they have, the 12s just go all out when they're at home. So I'm gonna go with Seattle to get the victory over the Saints. Next game, we got the Dallas Cowboys coming off an overtime win versus the Giants at the Chicago Bears. What's your prediction?
Yeah, the Bears are another team that had a lot of hype coming into the season and just really haven't, shown it yet. They looked good early against the Vikings in week 1, but then they got blown out by the Lions. Caleb Williams, I still think he can be a solid quarterback. He's got a lot of potential, but he's just really inconsistent right now. That entire team is really inconsistent. Ben Johnson maybe hasn't brought what we thought he was going to bring originally. And then the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys have been pretty solid. They stuck in there with the Eagles in week 1, and then got into kind of a surprising shootout with the Giants. I don't think anybody expected that being one of the better games. Dak Prescott looks pretty good. Javonte Williams has looked like pretty much a steal in free agency. He's looked like a really good running back for them. And then, George Pickens, they got a lot of weapons. I think that they're going to beat the Bears. I don't like what the Bears are doing right now, so I'm going to take the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's a rough start for the Bears. Ben Johnson, like, what he's trying to bring to Chicago is obviously it's going to take a bit, if anything. The Bears have all the talent in the world with the young talent that they've invested in. Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, who had a great game against the Lions. That defense and whatnot. DeAndre Swift, still a very credible and reliable running back and receiving back at the same time. It's just, for Chicago, it's really going to take a bit. Most importantly, for Caleb Williams, he's just got to work on being more consistent and just not putting so much oomph on his passes, not so much power. Just ease it back a little bit and just connect with DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Luther Burden if they get him involved, and of course the rookie tight end they got. As long as the defense can do their part, the Bears could be something down the road, maybe even later this season. We'll see. But it's a very slow start for Chicago. Dallas, I mean, like you said, Javonte Williams, it's like so far within the first 2 weeks, it's a new lease on life for Javonte, running behind a decent offensive line for Dallas. But, he's run the ball effectively. He's scored in both games, if I'm not mistaken. Dak, he's slinging the ball. He's doing, he's playing his heart out. There's no doubt about it. Versus the Eagles to open up the season, he played his heart out. It's just CeeDee Lamb just couldn't catch the ball whatsoever. And Dak's doing what he can. CeeDee had a much better performance. He had another 100-yard performance, not as many drops. I don't think he really dropped the ball in general versus the Giants. Pickens is starting to get involved. That defense is kind of worrisome if you're Dallas, especially that pass rush of theirs, since, of course, they don't have Micah no more. But considering they're going up against the Bears, who are trying to figure some things out, I think I'm going to favor Dallas to get the victory here on the road. But I could see this game being kind of close. I really can. I could see this coming down to a Brendan Aubrey field goal once again. But I got Dallas getting the victory nonetheless. Next game, we have a division rival matchup. We have an NFC West division rival matchup. We got the Arizona Cardinals at the San Francisco 49ers, who may or may not have Brock Purdy. Not sure yet. But Mac Jones, he did throw 3 touchdowns, so he looked pretty decent filling in for Purdy. Nonetheless, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I mean, Mac Jones, I think, is the perfect backup quarterback for the 49ers. He's just another one of those quarterbacks who works well in Kyle Shanahan's scheme. And then, I think both of these teams are a little bit of a shaky 2-0. The Cardinals have beaten the Panthers and the Saints. They haven't really been tested. And then the 49ers kind of had that lucky touchdown against the Seahawks week 1, and then they also played the Saints. So this is going to be an interesting one, but I think Kyler Murray is really underrated. The Cardinals' big issue last year was their defensive line was just awful, and they went in and they invested into it with Josh Sweat and other players. And then the 49ers, they're, again, it seems like every single season they just have loads and loads of injuries. Christian McCaffrey, he hasn't really produced a ton as a rusher. He's been better as a receiver. So we'll see if he ends up, having a game, getting back to his old self. This is going to be a good one. This is another game that could go either way, but I think that Kyler Murray is going to bring some magic, and I think the Cardinals are going to go to 3-0 this game.
See, this game could go either way when it comes to both teams being 2-0 right now. The 49ers, every year it seems that they just are badly dealt with the injury bug, especially in the early portion of the season. Purdy's dealing with his injury. Kittle's going to be out for another 3 to 4 weeks. Brandon Ayuk came back yet. They still got some other injuries along their team. They did look good against the Saints. Like I said, Mac Jones, and I know it's the Saints, but nonetheless, Mac Jones, he did his job as the backup. He connected well. He did what he needed to do. With the injuries, McCaffrey, he's not being that credible rusher, at least not yet, to start the season. Brian Robinson's kind of been used more in that factor since he's more of a rusher for sure. But McCaffrey, they're probably leaning on McCaffrey's receiving upside and ability. Not really upside, but just his credibility as a receiving back, considering the injuries that they're dealing with. Because I think Jennings is still dealing with something minor, and Ricky Pearsall is still coming into his second season. And that defense, it's not as strong. The 49ers defense is not as strong, though they have Robert Saleh back at defensive coordinator. There's some familiarity there. I do feel the 49ers are a strong team when they're fully healthy. That's just their Achilles heel. They can't stay healthy. The Cardinals, they got a lot of talent, and Kyler Murray, I feel like year by year, he's really coming into his own and just really growing and adapting as a passer more so. He doesn't really have to run the ball as effectively as he probably used to. As a passer, he's connecting. Trey McBride's a stud tight end. Marvin Harrison Jr., he put on muscle. He's looking decent so far. We know what James Conner can do as a rusher and a receiving back and whatnot. That defense, they got some names. Budda Baker's still there. They got Calais Campbell, the ageless wonder. They brought him back. Zayvon Collins. Will Johnson, who's been a very stud rookie so far within his first 2 weeks. I don't know how he fell to the second round, but that's a steal in my opinion for Arizona. Both these teams, they got a lot of talent. They're off to hot starts despite the opponents that they have faced so far. This game could really go either way, especially with it being a divisional matchup. You picked Arizona, but I think I'm going to go with the home team here. Even if it's Mac Jones at quarterback, I just think the home field advantage is really going to favor San Francisco right here at Levi Stadium. So I'm going to go with the 49ers to get the victory here as they go 3-0. Sunday Night Football, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the New York Giants. I mean, the Chiefs are 0-2, and the Giants, they are 0-2. So what's your prediction?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Chiefs are one of the most surprising 0-2 teams. I did not expect them to be that at this point. I think they're kind of reeling from not having Rashee Rice. He's just such an important part of their offense, and they also didn't have Worthy last week. So Mahomes is throwing to guys like Tyquan Thornton, and that's obviously not gonna. Mahomes is also their leading rusher. They haven't ran the ball well. He has more rushing yards than the rest of the team combined, which is not really what you want to see with your franchise quarterback having to put himself out there consistently. And then the Giants, they didn't look great week one, but then against the Cowboys, their offense really looked amazing. I mean, they got into a nice shootout. Russell Wilson looked really good. We'll see how long that lasts. And it also looks like maybe Cameron Scappo is going to, start taking over the RB1 role over Tyrone Tracy. He's looked really good. He's a really tough runner, and he's a great pass blocker. I do think this is going to be a good game because I don't think the Chiefs, until they get Rashee Rice and maybe Xavier Worthy, if he ever comes back, until they get those guys back, I think they're going to struggle offensively and have to deal with a lot of close games. But I can't see the Chiefs going 0-3, and so I'm going to take the Chiefs here in a close win.
Yeah, there's no way that the Chiefs lose to a team like the Giants, though. The Giants, they were in a shootout with Dallas. They performed better compared to week one. Most importantly, Russ did. Throwing 450 yards and 3 touchdowns and whatnot. He was throwing them moon balls to Nabbers and Robinson and Darius Slay and whatnot. He's connecting with the targets. They have quite the running back room with Cam Scattaboo and what's his name, Tyrone Tracy. They got some young backs there. Those are two guys that are very effective around the football. Though you mentioned Pat Mahomes, he's the Chiefs' leading rusher. So is Russell Wilson for the Giants. So stats of the weird right there so far to start the season. But the Giants, you can't really rely on them. whatsoever. I mean, like every week, you don't really know what type of Russell Wilson you're going to get, especially going up against the Chiefs defense that still got some names. Their front seven's very nice. George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Drew Tranquil, and Nick Bolton. Leo Chenal, they got some talent. We know what their secondary can do, is capable of, especially Trent McDuffie. Jaden Hicks, who I liked a lot coming out of college. I think is going to be a stud player for the Chiefs down the road. Mahomes is definitely feeling the effects of not having Rashee Rice. There's only so much he could do. Hollywood Brown, I think he's their leading receiver right now. Travis Kelce isn't exactly what he used to be. He is older, so you can definitely tell his age is coming to bite him already. He was responsible as well. I think he was responsible for that interception Mahomes threw to the Eagles, because it was like right off the hands of Kelce. Like he could have caught it and it could have been a touchdown, but he didn't make the grab. And their running game, it's not consistent. Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, they're not really being effective, and Mahomes is pretty much having to run for his life, carry the team on his back. There's no way that the Chiefs lose to the Giants. I don't even know why this is prime time. I don't get it. Like,
it's a very odd game.
It's Pat Mahomes versus Russell Wilson, on paper, but like, come on. Like, I would have substituted this for Los Angeles versus Philly. In my honest opinion, I think that would have been more the must-see matchup. But they got to put Kansas City in prime time. I got the Chiefs. There's no way the Giants win this. If the Giants win this, it'd be funny, but I just can't see Kansas City going 0-3. I can't. There's no way. But to close out week 3 of NFL football, we got Monday Night Football, and a damn good one at that. They picked the right game for Monday Night Football for week 3. We got the Detroit Lions at the Baltimore Ravens. This should be fun. What's your prediction?
Yeah, this is going to be a great game. I think that, the Lions both teams had a tough week 1 losses to other good teams, and then both had blowout wins last week. The Lions won big, and the Ravens won big as well. Although it was against bad teams, but still these two teams are really good. Lamar Jackson looks amazing. He looks back to his obviously he probably should have won MVP last year, and I think he's come back for that award. Derrick Henry kind of got shut down by the Browns, but he still is Derrick Henry. He looks much better week 1, and I think he'll be fine. And then the Lions, they looked really good. Jared Goff looked back to form after a bit of an interesting week 1. It's going to be unfortunate for that one of these teams are going to end the week 1 and 2, a bit of an undeserving 1 and 2. But I'm going to take the Ravens here. I think that the Ravens are going to, I think Lamar I don't know how you stop Lamar. He looks unstoppable so far this season. They've scored 40 points in both of their games. So I think they're going to keep rolling, and I think the Ravens are going to get another win here.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a huge test for the Lions defense with a first-year defensive coordinator at that, since Aaron Glenn's now the head coach for the Jets. They got some names, they got some players. I love Brian Branch, big fan of him coming out of Bama. DJ Reed, the free agent addition they got. Kirby Joseph is a ball hawk. Aiden Hutchinson, of course, coming back from injury. They got some players, but, trying to limit or slow down Lamar Jackson, it's a lot easier said than done. And Lamar Jackson, he's off to a great start, looking to have yet another MVP type season. Has yet to turn over the ball. No interceptions, no fumble losses within the first 2 weeks. So Lamar's kept it clean. He's playing superb, connecting with Zay Flowers, of course, DeAndre Hopkins. Not so much Mark Andrews, which kind of hurts me in fantasy, but rushing wise, Lamar and Derrick Henry, they didn't do much versus the Browns, but then again, it's against the Browns. They didn't really have to. Just dice up their secondary, and that's exactly what happened last week. The Ravens, there's no doubt about the type of team they have, plus that defense of theirs is just very, very credible. This game, honestly, it could really go either way. It could be a shootout. It could come down to whoever turns over the ball more, whoever stays on the field more with time of possession, who's more effective running the football, who's more effective passing the football. It could really go either way when you look further into this game. But I know the Ravens are at home and whatnot, but I am going to go with I don't know if you would consider it an upset. I guess you would, considering the start that Baltimore has had with how many points they put up on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with Detroit with the quote-unquote upset right here. Detroit rebounded big time like they needed to, going up against their former OC and Ben Johnson versus the Bears. 51 points they put up. St. Brown had 3 touchdowns. Gibbs looked good. Goff had 5 touchdowns. They rebounded big time, that offense did. Same with the defense. Detroit's going to have to come up big. They're going to have to come up and play. But if there's a head coach that's going to get them prepped and prepared and get those players locked in, it's Dan Campbell. So I'm going to go with the quote-unquote upset here with the Detroit Lions to finish off week 3. But ladies and gentlemen, those are the week 3 NFL predictions. Let us know your guys' thoughts and predictions down in the comments below. And I want to thank PaperPortal for joining me for week 3 predictions. It was fun having you on, man.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Definitely got to do this again for sure. Maybe even later down into the season or even next year for sure. But thanks for coming on again, man. But outside of that, guys, those are week 3 NFL predictions. Again, let us know your guys' thoughts and opinions down in the comments. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later. Peace.